Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is 12 o'clock Central Time, although I'm on East Coast time today. It's time for another session of Wednesdays with Wayne. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend an hour or so with me. I'm on the East Coast today. I'm in Connecticut. Did an event for Jeff Wright's office this morning. We have another one this afternoon. So the background doesn't look any different, but I'm in a different spot. So if I stumble today, I'll apologize because some things may be unfamiliar for me. We're going to talk today about something I think is really important. If you've been with us since the beginning of Wednesdays with Wayne, we've covered this before, what I call the immutable laws of real estate. But when we covered it the first time, we were in the middle of 2021. And as I went through this with everybody, I always said, well, this doesn't apply now, but it's going to at some point. Well, welcome to 2023. Because these laws absolutely apply in today's real estate. And what we want to try to give you today is some dialogue or some thought process that you can share with your clients on the way that a real estate market works. Because it's always been my contention that a real estate market does work by rule and by law. And that if you understand the laws, this thing gets easier. If your clients understand the laws, it gets a lot easier. And we always run into those situations where perhaps we know what the value of a home is, but we have a hard time getting the seller to agree with what the value of a home is, or we know that a buyer should make a really great offer on a house, and yet the buyer wants to come in with a lowball offer. So I want to introduce you to the laws today, and it helps you with a lot of those conversations. Obviously, as always, you'll get a recording of this. You'll also get all of the laws in a PowerPoint. You have a manual that goes through where you can fill in the blanks today. But let's just dig into the immutable laws of real estate. So the first thing I would tell you, law number one is processes. Selling real estate is 100% a battle of processes. Now what I mean by that is this. Either you get the client into your process where you know all of the rules, or you end up in the client's process. Now, what happens to us when we end up in the client's process is a lot of times we get partway through the process with the client and we decide we don't like their process a lot anymore. But our mantra as an industry becomes, well, I've worked with them so long now, I have to keep going. Or we violate our process based on where a lead came from. Gee, Wayne, it was a referral. So, even though I wasn't sure if they were very good, I had to work with them, because they were a referral. And I will tell you that's not true. You don't have to work with people that you don't want to. But the reason we find ourselves so often in other people's processes is we don't have a process of our own that we follow each and every single time. And that's one of the main things that I think is very, very important in our industry, is that you do have processes that you run through all the time. Now, you'll notice this one is in red. All right. Now, here's the deal with laws that are in red today, guys. Laws that are in red, I believe, should be in your listing presentation. All right. That these conversations should be in your listing presentation. Now, whether you choose to create some printed document around it or whatever, this is a concept that sellers need to understand. So every time there's something in red, it's a seller concept that we need to make sure they understand. So law number 2 says real estate is all about control. One party always has control of a real estate transaction. It's never a level playing field. An appraiser would tell you it's a ready, willing, and able buyer and a ready, willing, and able seller. But somebody's always got the upper hand. So here's the control levers. For a seller, number 1, time on market is a control lever for a seller, meaning the shorter the time is on the market, the more control a seller has. And yet, sellers will always look at us and say, I'm not in a hurry, I've got time. We need to be able to bring to the table that I understand you have time, but we need to explain to you what happens the longer you're on the market. The longer you're on the market, control starts to shift to the buyer. The buyer starts asking the questions of how long has it been on the market? Oh, it's its first day on the market. Now you have control as a seller. How long has it been on the market? 90 days. Oh, really? And even if they thought the value was there, when they hear a number that a property's been on the market for 90 days, they're not going to come in and offer full price. If we're going to get bidding wars, as we all went through in 2021, you're going to get a bidding war in the very beginning. You don't get bidding wars 90 days into this deal. So seller control lever number one is time on market. The shorter the time on the market, the more control they will have, and thus the more, can't believe I just used the word thus, and the more money they will get for their home every time. Control lever number two is the price that they ask. And we're going to talk about brackets here in a bit. But the key thing with pricing is we have to make sure we're getting the right buyer through, okay? We just want to make sure that pricing is proper. Now, so the last half of 2021, first part of 22, people said, oh, the marketplace is slowing down. And I would always ask the question, well, how do you know the marketplace is slowing down? Well, I'm starting to see a lot of price reductions. And I said, well, either A, the marketplace is slowing down, or B, agents have stopped running any kind of a market analysis at all to try to figure out what these things are really worth. I think it's more of B than it was A. So a seller can get control by how long they're on the market. Again, shorter time frame, more control. The price that they ask. Obviously, that's how we create a bidding war. Here's number three, how easy a house is to get into. Now, we've been in marketplaces, right? And again, I'm going to frame all this with what we went through in 2021. The sellers still want to think that's where the market is, but that's not it. The harder a house is for me to show as an agent, the less likely I'm going to show it. Now, when there was no inventory, I had no choice but to play by whatever rules, as did the buyers. You had to play by whatever rules the seller laid out because they had no competition. We're starting to see a modicum of competition come back into the market. So we need to make sure that our sellers understand that, hey, we need to make your house easy for buyers to get into and easy for agents to get into. Number four is the condition of the property. Again, this is a big shift in our market. 2021, you could have had a property in bad condition. It was still going to sell. Bad carpet, holes in the walls, needed appliances. It didn't matter. So much cash in the market. Now we're seeing more and more 90% loan to value, 95. FHA and VA are back in play now. So the condition of your property now has to be what the buyer expects to see, and we'll talk about the baseline here in a bit. But if you're bringing a property to the market now that needs a lot of work, there's not as many cash buyers as there were. So your property simply gets eliminated. So we need to be having that conversation with sellers about things we need to do to the condition before we put the house on the market. And then number five is the terms that a seller might offer. Now, this is the first time that I've seen terms be in play probably, honestly, in about 10 or 15 years. I'm seeing a lot of builders now run ads of 2-1 buy downs, 3-2-1 buy downs. And that speaks strictly to the terms. So these are the 5 ways that a seller has to get in control of a transaction. Now, interestingly, a buyer only has 2, and it's time on market. If a house has been on the market a long time, the buyer now has control of the transaction. All right. And then the second one is the condition of the property. If there's work that needs to be done to the property, the buyer, you're going to start seeing this, the buyer's now going to come in with a lowball offer, or more importantly, the buyer who doesn't have the cash reserves to do the remodeling or the fixing up, they will simply eliminate the property and move on. Now, the seller has 5 control levers, a buyer only has really 2. They try to find a third one a lot in the conversations as we're showing property. If they go into a property and they see two big things. Number one, they understand it's a couple that owns the house, but there's only one set of clothes that are hanging in the closet. How many times have you had them look at you and go, oh, is this a divorce? That's a buyer trying to gain control. A vacant house, seller's already moved, and the buyer will be like, well, where did they go? Oh, they bought another house. Oh, so they own 2 houses. So these are all the subtleties that play out. Here's the bottom line, guys. Sellers have 5 control levers. Buyers have 2. Who's in control of most real estate transactions? Sellers. If you want to have a great life as a realtor, who should you be dealing more with? Sellers, simply because they have more ways of getting in control of the transaction. So that's law number 2, control. Number 3 is information. Seller information tends to decrease over time because agents are not good at communicating with sellers after we list the house. So a seller tends to operate in a silo. They have the information you gave them the day you listed it, but if you're not giving them ongoing information throughout the process, they're operating with that static set of rules that you laid out the day that you listed it. So a seller, I guess we could say, gets dumber over time. Buyers get smarter over time. They've looked at more houses. They maybe have tried to buy a couple, right? They're researching information all the time. So a buyer's information level increases over time. A seller's decreases, absent a great listing agent who is keeping them in flow all the time. Our next session is going to be on listing presentations, and we're going to talk a lot about communication protocols with your sellers, because that is the number one value proposition for a seller, is how you're going to communicate with them consistently and by some level of a protocol. Law number 4 is emotions. Buyers start the process very pragmatically, then they become emotional. They start, and you're going to see this now as more buyers start to come into the marketplace with rates. When rates start to drop, you're going to see more buyers come in, and they're going to be looking at a geographic area with static physical features of a house. I want to live in this part of town. I need at least these many bedrooms and this many baths. What do you have? And they're not emotional about it. Conversely, sellers start out very emotionally because this is their home, and they become pragmatic over time. All right. So you have sellers, this is their home. To a buyer, it's another house. That's probably the easiest way for me to frame pragmatic versus emotional. This is why, guys, if you have a house that sells very, very quickly, both the buyer and the seller are operating from emotions. This is why if it sells quickly, you're probably going to have a really, really great transaction. The longer you're on the market, the more the seller stops being emotional about it and becomes pragmatic. When you have one pragmatic person in the conversation buying residential real estate, it could get ugly. When you have two pragmatic people, it will get ugly. There's no doubt about it. But when you have a seller who is emotionally involved and it's their home, and a buyer actually pulls the trigger because of emotions, this is when the seller is like leaving things for the buyer. Oh, we're going to leave this because I saw your kids, we're going to leave the swing set, whatever it is, right? Law number 5 is baselines. Buyers draw a baseline of physical features and they will not go below it. This is a key point in running a market analysis. We have got to be comparing like properties, all right? Because buyers will tend to buy a marginal condition house that has the physical features they want versus a house that doesn't have the physical features but is in better shape. All right. So when we're running CMAs, if you have a subject house that is, say, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, it is, to me personally, a fallacy for you to compare that property to 3-bedroom, 2-bath pricing, because buyers will gravitate toward physical features every time over condition. So make sure that you're comparing like to like. Now, again, talking about appraisers can do this. Appraisers will have a formula for what that second bathroom is worth. But that's not the way a buyer works their way through the process. Buyers are like, look, I got to have this or I don't want to look at it. Law number 6 is the Camelot law. Again, sellers need to understand this. Buyers will not buy a house until they have to. Why settle for a house today when the perfect house may come on the market tomorrow, when Camelot may come on the market tomorrow? Where this plays out for sellers is you're going to get a lot of people coming through houses that aren't ready to buy anything yet, because buyers don't buy until they have to. So don't let your seller be very frustrated with showings, and then when we check back for feedback on those showings, we find out that they're not ready to do anything. We need to be coaching our sellers that, hey, you're going to have people come through that aren't ready to buy yet, right? So in your world, what is an A buyer, right? So we would always hear ready, willing, and able. Ready, willing, and able. That's always the thing that people throw out, a ready, willing, and able buyer. And I would contend to you it's this. that they have a desire to do something. They have the financial ability to do it, but they have a set time frame. Because if I don't have a set time frame, a better house may come on the market tomorrow, or rates may drop again lower, and I could go buy even more house. I mean, if you look at what happened in our marketplace, we had this furor of buyers because rates were so low. And as soon as rates went up, people were like, well, I can't afford the house I wanted to buy anymore, so I don't want to buy anything. As rates start to go down, you're going to see buyers come back in. But if they don't have a time frame, and then that time frame is defined by they have their current house under contract, or they have a lease that is about up and ready to, they're going to have to make some kind of a decision, they don't buy, they just continue to look. All right. So an A buyer is desire, financial ability, and a set time frame. I would always tell my sellers, look, it's about 20% of the buyers that come through your house have the ability and have a time frame. The other 80% of the people, when we check back, they really want a buyer for your house. Law number 7 is the pool. We've said this for years. The best buyers are the very first buyers that come through your house. The best buyers are the first buyers that come through your house. The big question here, though, is why is that? And there's a reason why the best buyers are the first buyers. And it deals with what we've laid out in law number 6. There's a pool of buyers out there who have looked at a series of houses and they've looked at their agent and said, let me know when something new comes up. Or coming out of 2021 and the first part of 22, they've missed out on a bunch of houses, right? Those are the very first people that come through your house. All right? The very first people that come through your house are the ones that want to live where your house is. They've seen everything else. Nothing fit the bill. And it's, let me know when something new comes up. And they all come in the very beginning. And that's because of what I call the pool. So make sure that your sellers understand, this old strategy of, well, I'm going to start here, and then if I can't get that, I'm going to drop the price and go on down. What you're doing is you're raising market time, a key indicator for buyers on the value of a property, and you're going to have to keep cutting the price till you get the right people in, right? So the best buyers are the first buyers. Law number 8 is manipulation. Agents unknowingly manipulate the market. We do it in a hallway conversation where you'll be walking past someone in the hallway and say, hey, what are you doing today? Well, I'm going out and showing this, that, and the other. Oh, I just showed that the other day. This one's a great house. I hope it's on your list. Now, this other one, it's not very good. There's one of them, it's probably gone because I think my people actually should have bought it. And all of a sudden, we're manipulating the market. What sellers must understand is we want the agent population manipulating their home in a positive way, creating a furor about their house. Look, we've all seen houses come up on MLS, and you see the address and you know where it is as a realtor, and you see the price, and you go, I'm not even going to bother calling my buyer. There's no way a house, and now we have pictures online, right? There's no way this house is worth that money. As opposed to, oh my gosh, I got to call my buyer right now. This is a fit. I hope it's still there. And you try to get your buyer to go out on their lunch hour and take a look at it or whatever. This is the way real estate has always worked. The problem is most agents, quite honestly, don't realize the protocols, if you will, or the laws. And so they're not telling their clients about it. But when the clients don't know about it, they can only operate from the information that they have. So our value in today's world is not only helping the seller interpret the information they already have, but also bringing these unsaid laws to the table. So make sure when we list your house. And so if I tell you as a seller, look, your house needs to be priced at $225, and here's all the reasons why. Well, I want to go at $275. I can always come down, but I can't go up. It seems to be the mantra of the seller. We'll just understand that if we go at $275, the agent, we're not going to hit the first level of every house, and that's one of my laws, and I'll lay out the 3 levels of home sales here in a bit. Law number 9 is the ripening vine. Buyers normally will miss out on 1 or 2 before they purchase. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. One is buying a house, a system of compromise. You're not going to find everything that you want. And the other one is that their timing was off. They started looking before they actually had to buy one. So they won't buy till they have to, per law number 6, right? So if a buyer, let's just say you got a buyer right now, and their lease is up in May, end of May, they will want to start looking at houses now, but their lease isn't up till the end of May. They're not really going to buy one until mid-February or mid-April. The reason being, hey, by the time I have to do this, rates may fall and I might be able to buy more house. And by the way, we can't get a seller that has priced their property properly to wait until May to close in most cases. So that's the big reason why people miss out on houses. Law number 10 is payment. We are a payment-driven economy, folks. We are. Most buyers don't care about the final sales price of the home they purchase. They really only care about down payment and monthly payment. Isn't it interesting how much cash was in the market 18 months ago and how everybody's freaked out about interest rates right now? That tells me that there wasn't really that much cash per se in the marketplace. There was short-term cash and people were going to finance their way back out and put the cash back wherever it came from. And because they were trying to get in on the 2.5%, 3.5% interest rates. They're not trying to do that now that rates are at, high 5s, low 6s. We now live in a payment-driven economy. Sellers need to understand this, all right? People do not care. It's one of my other laws. Law number 11 is ratio. Because buyers don't care what the sales price is, year after year after year after year, properties sell between 96 to 98% of asking price. Now, in 2021, 63% of the time, the property brought full price or greater. In 2022, even in what we thought was a downward trending market, the numbers just came out. 65% of the properties in 2022 brought full price or greater. Now, with that, we also saw an increase in price reduction. So what does that tell us? It tells us that if you're going to operate in this marketplace right now as a seller, you got two choices. You price it right, you get in, you sell your house, you probably still create a bidding war, and you move on and you sell your house. If you price it too high, it's just going to sit. Because 65% of the time they brought full price or greater. But year after year after year, properties bring 96 to 98% of listed price. There is not a lot of negotiation that goes on in the selling of property. Law number 12 is time, and it just simply says time is not a seller's friend, and we talked about that earlier. The longer you're on the market, statistically run the numbers, you will find that you will get less money for your house the longer you're on the market. This weekend, literally, I was just looking at the market where I live, Springfield, Missouri, and we had, I think it was 358 new listings, 351 sales, and then I started looking through individual sales, right? The properties that sold, the average, you saw 1 day, 2 days, 4 days, 3 days, 1 day, no days. And then over here, you had this whole other list of houses where they were having to do price reductions. So there's a difference for sellers, right, between being in the market and being on the market. And we're seeing a lot of sellers be on the market, but not in the market. This is why your presentation skills are so crucial on making a listing presentation. We've got to keep reinforcing this point. Time is not your friend. Sellers always think if I sold it quick, I sold it too cheap. That's not the case. It never has been the case.
Wayne, we have a question here. They want to know, will you
Okay.
be going over your price reduction strategy?
Yes. Not today, but in the listing presentation, we definitely will.
Perfect.
Yes. Yes. So here's the deal, guys. Y'all deal with new inventory, not old inventory. You deal with the brand new houses. So you take a buyer out, and again, sellers need to understand this. You take a buyer out, you show them a series of properties. They don't like any of them. They look at you and they say, let me know when something new comes up. That becomes your world with this buyer. The new properties that come up. A new house comes on the market. You deem the value to be there. You turn around and call your buyers. okay? And so absent a price reduction or an upgrade in condition, once you're old inventory, there's not going to be anything to restart this process. Law number 13 is flip a coin. In 2021, 74% of the time sellers did not reduce their asking price. 26% of the time the asking price was reduced. The numbers really didn't change all that much. In 22, 72% of sellers did not reduce their price. 28% of the time they did have to reduce. So even in 2021, in the hottest real estate market we've ever seen, 26% of the people had to reduce the price of their house before they got it sold. I'll just tell you, that's the agent's fault. That is the agent's fault. And we will talk about this at length in the listing presentation sessions that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. We've got to be better here. We've got to make sure in today's world that we're bringing properly priced property to the marketplace. Law number 14 is expectations. The condition of a home needs to be at the market, okay? You will not get more money for over improvement of your property. They will not pay extra money for features they do not expect to see. Conversely, go back one. Conversely, if you do not have the features that buyers expect to see at that price point, they will simply eliminate your house and move on. Again, this is something you're going to see come back to the fore this year. Buyers, there's not going to be that much cash in the marketplace again. You're already hearing that credit card debt is way up, right? So this cash that was in the market where we could put a marginal conditioned house on the market and people would still fight for it and bid for it and redo it, that's not out there anymore. So my classic example that I've always used with people, let's say you're a gourmet chef and you have a Viking range because you wanted a Viking range because you're a gourmet chef. And you have a $200,000 house. Well, you got a Viking range and a $200,000 house. Your house is not going to be worth that much more because you have a Viking range. Conversely, let's say you have a $800 million house and you don't have Viking appliances or that level of appliances, you're going to get whacked. I mean, I used to use granite countertops as the analogy, but now everyone uses granite countertops. They become more almost, I don't want to say entry level, but close to it, right? But buyers won't pay extra money for things they don't expect to see. Now, that may be the reason they buy your house over another one. So let me talk to you about how we get into that conversation or where it comes up. When you do a CMA on a property, at the base level, every property is average. And we want to base everything off averages, and then we want the seller to sell us on why their property would be worth more than that. So let's say that they have outstanding landscaping, as an example. You know, we spent all this money on all this landscaping. But what I would tell you is, if it's not a qualifier for a buyer at the first level, it doesn't have any value that we can price in. So no one calls us and says, oh, by the way, Wayne, I only want to look at houses with great landscaping. I only want to look at houses with security systems. I only want to look at houses with this, that, or the other. And if that's not that opening dialogue, we can't hang a dollar amount on it. Now, if you have those things and you're competing head on with properties that don't have those, based on your physical conditions, based on your price, those are the things that will make someone buy your house over another. But we can't necessarily put a dollar amount on those things. So that's expectation. This is a big part of the conversations with sellers. Law number 15 is one of the big ones, and it's bracketing. Now, I still show the bracketing under 100, although I will acknowledge that across the country that there's hardly any houses under 100,000 anymore. But if you will run your own stats on your market, here's what you will find. Under $100,000, it's $5,000 brackets. Between 100 and 200,000, it's $10,000 brackets. 200 to 300, it's $25,000 brackets. Over 300, it's $50,000 brackets. I would contend that once you cross $1 million, it's probably $100,000 brackets. And what I mean by that is this: if you'll run the stats, you will rarely see a house priced in the 150s that sells in the 140s. It'll either sell in the 150s or it just won't sell. And if it's priced in the 150s, as an example, and it sells in the 140s, go look at the market time. I'll guarantee you it's a high number, because this is the way the marketplace works. Go over 300. If a house is priced at 350 and it sells for less than 300, I will guarantee you it will have a long market time. Price bracketing is huge. And the only way that you can really do this is spend a little time prepping, dig into the numbers. I did this years ago. It is still a law. You will see that the mathematics of this will come screaming off the page. Okay? So we want to make sure that we are bracketing properties properly. Law number 16 is cream, and it simply says cream rises. Buyers will buy the best house they can find, the amount of monthly budget that they have. So when we put your house on the market, why wouldn't we just make sure that we're one of the best houses? Because selling houses is competition. You know, it's always been funny. Agents have said for years, you know, I had this listing and no one wanted it. And then all of a sudden, everybody wanted it. That's so weird. But to me, it's really not weird. It simply says that everything better than your subject house has sold. I mean, if the government got in and put a limit on the number of houses that could sell in every price range, every house would sell, because ultimately you would become the cream. Now, the question that I always have to ask a seller is, why wouldn't you just want to start out as one of the best houses? Because ultimately buyers will buy the best house they can find, and there will be a commonality to it among the buyers that come through your house. Law number 17, who's helping who? Selling houses is all about competition. Every time we introduce a listing to the market, either the marketplace, i.e. those houses that are already there, are going to help you sell your listing, or the cold reality is you're going to help somebody else sell theirs. You're going to make their house look better because the buyer will look at your house and go, well, that one over there has either more square footage, or it's a little less price, or the condition is better, or whatever. So selling houses is all about competition. And this is a hard concept for a seller because it is their home. To a buyer, it's another house that I'll be looking at. So every time we put a house on the market, either we're helping someone else sell their house, or they're going to help us sell ours. Because in a competitive environment, we are going to be the one that people choose. Huge concept in a listing presentation. Law number 18, the 3 levels. I would call this the mother of all laws. This should be part of your listing presentation. Every house that goes under contract goes through these 3 levels every time. All we're really playing with is how long it takes them to go through the 3 levels. And the longer it takes to get through these levels, the less money your seller will receive for their property. So the first level is agent excitement. We have got to get the other agents in the marketplace excited about your property when we put it on the market. How do we get agents excited? We get agents excited by where it is and how much we're asking for it. That's really the only way. And we will never get every agent excited about your new listing. You'll only get the agents excited about your new listing that have a buyer in that price range and in that location. But when the agents are excited, what's the first thing they do? They turn around and call their buyers. So when we put your house on the market, if the agents get excited, they're going to call their buyers, and we're going to have buyers in great numbers. And when we check back, we're always one of the top 2 or 3 homes for those buyers. Because what one buyer likes, they all like. What one buyer dislikes, they all dislike, because they're all looking at the same houses. So where this is going to play out for you guys, and I said earlier that one of the biggest value propositions that you can have for a seller is your communication protocol. So the conversation in a listing presentation is this: if we price your house at X, here's what we know will happen. Number one, the agents will be excited. They will call their buyers, and their buyers will all show up because they think the value is there. And then when we check back, what we want to consistently hear is we're one of the top 2 or 3 homes. Okay? If we put your house on the market and we get no showings, that tells us the agents weren't even excited, and we need to talk and figure out the adjustment that we need to make. Let's say that we put your house on the market and we get showings. We hit the second tier, but no one ever comes back. And that's the one dynamic to the marketplace right now that we're seeing. Buyers have the lever of time a little bit more on their side. They now can go home and think about it or pray about it or sleep on it, right? They don't have to make that snap decision. So because of that, what we're going to see is, we went through this phase where we had a bunch of properties falling out. I think it was either June or July of 21. There was this unbelievable number of fall through contracts. That was simply because buyers didn't have time to think about it. They just had to pull the trigger. And then they used the inspection provision after they thought about it as a way to back out of the contract. All right. So when we list your property, we want to see the agents excited. That'll get us the buyers. When we get the buyers, we want to be one of the top 2 or 3. If we get no buyers, we have to have a conversation. If we get buyers, but nobody comes back a second time, we need to sit down and have a conversation, because we've got to be one of the top 2 or 3 homes. Every single solitary time, we have got to be one of the top 3 picks for every buyer that comes through here, given that they were actually a buyer. And this is why feedback and the questions that you ask, or the specific questions that you ask in trying to get feedback to deliver to your seller, this is why the questions that you ask are so important. Okay? But we're going to hit all 3 of these levels. Now in 2021, you were hitting these levels in 6 hours. Now, what we would always tell people is expect buyers in great numbers is 8 to 10 showings in the first 2 weeks. I think we've moved back to that type of a marketplace now. So let's don't let our sellers have an unrealistic expectation that we're going to get 10 showings in the first 3 hours. All we've really been playing with in real estate is compression of time frames. Now we're starting to see those time frames elongate again back to the norm. Doesn't mean that the laws have changed, just the time frame of things have changed. So I would tell you, get this into your listing presentation, create a page about it, put it in your pre-list packet, because every house that sells goes through these 3 levels. All we're playing with is how long does it take? And again, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the faster we do this, the more money you'll get. Law number 19 is presentation. Your contract presentations are in direct proportion to your listing and buyer presentations. If you want to have simple, easy contract presentations, master listing and buyer presentations, master the expectations. If you don't master listing and buyer presentations, you're going to have buyers making lowball offers because they're going to think they have a lot of negotiating power. You're going to have sellers. If you don't get pricing right, you're going to have elongated market time. Sellers are going to get frustrated with the process. So please work on your presentation skills. As to the presentation that I gave this morning, being really great at this and having a lot of strategy is always important, but it didn't always matter. We saw that in the marketplace that we came out of, or we have come out of, is that you didn't really have to worry about what anything was worth. You could just throw it on the market, it would probably sell. Please trust me when I say, and y'all know this, we're not in that world anymore. This is about sitting down and having a very serious conversation with someone, trying to help them do the number one thing that they want to do with their largest single investment for most Americans. Law number 20 is perfection. Perfect house doesn't exist. You can't waste time working with buyers looking for the perfect house. If someone ever says to you, you know what, when we find the perfect house, we're going to buy it, I would contend you should get away from that person. because because not ever going to be perfect. If you go spend you have an unlimited budget and you build the house of your dreams, I will bet all the money I've got that you're going to move in there and you're going to live there like a week and you're going to wish you did something differently. The perfect house does not exist. Okay. When we're dealing on the buyer side, the dynamics of working the buyer side is it takes time and it's reactive. Okay. You do not want to spend your time as a real estate agent working with a lot of buyers looking for the perfect house. Let someone else work with those people. Take that time, energy, and effort and work on the listing side of the equation. So that's just an aside. Make sure you're having a great conversation with a buyer. Make sure the buyers that you're working with have a time frame. I would contend to you that time frame needs to be within 60 days because they're probably not going to buy, especially when we have downward trending rates. Historically, and we'll see if this happens, rates shot up so much it took buyers out of the market. But historically, when the pressure is for rates to fall, people don't buy. They're trying to wait out the bottom. They're trying to time the bottom. This is honestly, to me, the opposite side of this was why we had such horrible inventory numbers. Sellers were trying to time the peak of the market. Well, buyers are always trying to time the bottom of interest rates. So if you're trying to time the bottom of interest rates and you don't have a date you have to move, you'll continue to try to time the bottom of interest rates. Law number 21 is monthly. Buyers will always buy the best house they can find for the monthly budget they have. Again, we're a payment-driven economy, guys. It started, I could go down the long list of how it started that way, but it's no longer, it doesn't any longer seem to be the American dream to own your house free and clear. It seems to be the American dream to live in a house until I can afford a bigger, better house with a bigger, better payment and go do that. There's not a lot of equity being built up. That has to do with a change in the tax law years ago, where the equity in your house used to be sacred. It was called the over 55 rollover rule. I don't want to go down a long trail of tax law. But that change in that law took us to our current law, where if you live in a house 2 years, you can sell it, and you can take the equity and you can put it in your pocket. We're going to probably see that. I think that's what's going to drive more inventory numbers, is people are going to say, you know what? I made pretty good money on this thing. I missed the peak, but I'm going to go ahead and sell it now. All right. Law number 22 is showings. You do not lose a buyer in negotiations. They're lost in the showing of property. This is a huge concept for sellers. Think about it. Think about the number of times that a buyer has put pen to paper and made an offer. It's a very small percentage of the time that we don't get a deal put together. Now, it may fall out because of property inspections or whatever, but where we really lose buyers is in the showing of property. Have you ever had a buyer, say they wanted to go look at a house and walk in the front door and literally look at you and go, I don't need to see any more, let's go? I mean, I've said this for years. Pictures are the greatest thing that ever happened to real estate, and they're also the worst thing that ever happened to real estate. I mean, it is amazing how good some houses can look in pictures, but we're losing buyers in the showing of property. People hit the door and they go, nope, I'm out. Or they pull up in front of it and say, I don't even want to go in. But once a buyer puts pen to paper, because they're emotionally involved, it's an emotional buy. As long as we're reasonable, we'll put a deal together. Law number 23 is fluidity. The marketplace moves daily. It is 1:45 where I am on the East Coast. Wherever you are right now at 1:45, the marketplace is different than it was at 8 o'clock this morning. There are properties that have gone under contract that weren't under contract yesterday. There are new listings that have come on the market this morning. The marketplace moves every single day. And that's why it's so important that we keep great communication with our clients, specifically our seller clients, because you've got to make sure that as this thing moves, we're always still one of the top 2 or 3 houses. Law number 24 is top loading, which goes along with fluidity. The real estate market is top loaded. So a concept to explain to your sellers that I will go through this in the listing presentation. When we list your house today, we know we're going to be the best house on the market. But tomorrow we may be number 4 if 3 more houses come on the market that are better than ours by some baseline definition of better. They have more square footage, they have better condition, whatever. So the challenge that people have, that sellers have, is there's a lot of sellers that are quote unquote on the market, but they're not in the market. They're number 6 or 7. Buyers are always going to buy the top 2 or 3. You may be sitting here today knowing that you have a house that's not one of the top 2 or 3 in the price bracket. Personally, I think you have a duty to go have a conversation with those people about what needs to happen in the reduction of their price. And this is probably the question that was asked of me earlier. The easiest way to do that, the way that makes that conversation much, much easier, is a biweekly report every 2 weeks, where you're analyzing the market on a rolling 2-week look, and you're showing them where they stack up. Because when you gave them the listing presentation, if you're at least using our theory on the listing presentation, you're showing them who their top competition is. Now, if that house sells, you move up. But then if 2 more houses come on the market, you move back down again. And so when someone is sitting there and they're not getting the traction, right? And the longer they're on the market, the fewer showings they get, and the lower the quality of the showings. So a big, huge concept is real estate markets are top loaded. We want to always make sure one of the top 2 or 3 houses. Law number 25 is 24/7. Real estate, like life, is all about control. If you can't control your buyers and sellers, you will have no life. That's why the questioning that we will propose to you in listing presentations and buyer presentations is trying to set up and understand what the client feels like they have the right to expect from you. All right? Because life is too short for you to deal with people that you do not like, that you do not like to be around. And people don't morph in the middle of a transaction. You don't get someone who got ugly after the transaction. They were ugly the day you met them. You just didn't have a process that pulled out how they were going to react, okay? You guys that have been around me for a while, I don't believe in the 24/7 realtor model. I don't believe in 7 days a week. I believe in turning pro, becoming really, really good at a few things, becoming really, really good at the key delivery points in real estate, and just staying there and having this great life as a realtor. There is no correlation between the number of hours that a realtor works and the amount of money they make. It's not true. It's like the big realtor lie, and I'm very passionate about this. Law number 26 is knowledge. When buyers and sellers understand the principles, they'll make great decisions. Now, for some people, the decision is they don't want to participate. They don't want to play, and you need to be okay with that. If I tell you what your house is worth and I can back it up statistically and it makes sense to you, but it's like, I wouldn't sell it for that, then let's don't even go through the process. I'll stay in touch with you, and when the marketplace reaches your number, I'll call you back about that. And the other thing that I would tell you is, when you're the one that explains these principles and you educate your client, their great decision is they're going to want to work with you. So I think we've got to move from salespeople to consultant, from consultant to trusted advisor, so that we're bringing knowledge to the table for our clients. Law number 27 is the law of abundance. And it just says this: if you need the deal more than your client does, you're dead. You got to always be dealing with motivated people. I mentioned this gentleman earlier today. Jim Good was a gentleman that I hired years ago to teach me how to talk to people on the phone. And his mantra was, the goal of any contact, outgoing or incoming, is to identify a potential client. It is not to try to turn people into clients. It is not to try to motivate someone to buy or motivate someone to sell. They need to bring that to the table before you start working with them. Now, if you're new to the industry, this is a trap that I watch people fall in. It's like, well, I know that they're probably not going to buy, but I'm new and I have time. And I'm here to tell you after 37 years of this, no, you don't have time, because that's the habits that you will create. Work on protecting your time. Work on working smart. Work on high quality pay time. All of these things that we lay out. You've got to be dealing with motivated people. This is too big an investment for you to motivate somebody to sell their house. They either have the motivation or they don't. It's too big an investment for you to motivate somebody to buy one. They either have the motivation or they don't. Law number 28 is delivery points. There's 5 key service delivery points in real estate sales. There are 5 places where you need to slow down, where you need to crush it. There are also the 5 places where you actually earn money. Number 1 is in a listing presentation. I don't believe personally there's a more dollar productive thing for y'all to be doing than doing listing presentations every single day. Number 2 is a buyer presentation. And we are going to talk at length about buyer presentations again in the coming weeks. And the reason is sometime in 2023, there will this NAR lawsuit, class action NAR lawsuit I read a few weeks ago, it's going to court sometime late 2023. They've tried to get it kicked out. They're not kicking it out. And it's going to deal with buyer presentations. And you're going to have to really have a great buyer presentation showing a buyer why they should hire you. And I've developed a buyer presentation that I'll share with you and the things that they'll get if they choose you to represent them. So that's the second one. Here's the third one when you're writing a contract. Slowing down and explaining to people the ramifications of what they're about to sign. When you're presenting a contract to a seller and making sure the seller understands all the dynamics. When you're negotiating property inspections and repairs. Those are the 5 places where we actually earn money. The rest of what we do is the quest to go find more clients to be able to do one of these things with, right? The prospecting side. But at the end of the day, this is where we make our money. This is where we earn our fees. So these are the 5 places you need to slow down. And then you need to speed everything else up, right? Slow down when you're making a listing presentation. Slow down on buyers. Slow down when you're writing a contract, presenting. Don't get emotionally involved. Stay in your process and slow down. Explain everything to people. Now, in today's online world where we're emailing and docu-signing documents or dot looping or whatever you're doing, it's harder for you to bring value in these situations if you're doing everything online. That's why when you're doing these things, I would love to see you sitting down with somebody face to face. Probably an outlier on that though. All right, that's the 22 or 28 immutable laws. It frames everything that happens in a real estate transaction. All of these laws are in play every time there's a successful transaction. With that, I will open it up for questions about any specific laws or if you want some more detail about them.
We've got a question in here. Mike Albert would like if you could go back to law number 2 and number 21. Just as a reminder to everybody, also, we will send out a PDF so you guys will have all of these laws on Friday morning. But yes, we will go back to law number 2 and then law number 21. Okay.
Law number 2, the law of control. I don't know if Mike has a specific question about it or he just wanted me to put the slide back up.
Mike, if you have a question, you're welcome to raise your hand and we can give you permission to speak.
Absolutely. But look, the sellers have 5 ways of doing this. And if a seller, look, if you have a low time on market, your property's priced well, it's easy to show it's in good condition and you offer me some terms, you're going to be the best house. Buyers only have 2. So if you want to have a great life, go work with a bunch of sellers. They just have more ways. And I've watched this happen over the years. From 2008 to 12, when we were kind of in the trough of this thing, it took a couple of years for buyers to get any kind of control at all. And then rates dropped and all the control shifted back to the seller again. Right? I mean, look at it now. you would think that this would be, the buyers would be controlling the market now, wouldn't you? But they're not. They're not. The sellers that are pricing right are still in control, and it's just because they have more ways of getting there. All right, now let's go on to Law 21. Oh, yeah. Buyers will always buy the best house they can find for the monthly budget that they have. So I said I wasn't going to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. So and this is not when I say this is not a political comment. Don't take this as politics. It just happened during this person's administration. During Bill Clinton's administration, there was a change in the tax law. Now Bill Clinton is credited with having one of the most robust economies of any president. I personally believe it was because of this change in tax law. So there used to be something called the over 55 rollover rule. And the over 55 rollover rule said on your personal house, you could sell it one time in your life, and it would be a non-taxable event. You could take up to $250,000 of the equity of your home, and you could put it in your pocket tax-free. During Clinton's administration, they changed that law, and they made it you could sell your personal house every 2 years, okay, and put the money in your pocket. I personally believe that Congress and the Senate and everybody in politics looked up and said, there's a lot of money sitting in the equities in houses. We need to figure out a way to get it flowing in the economy again. Let's let people take the equity in their house and spend it, because we know Americans, they'll spend it, and that's exactly what we did. And so the cash went out of the marketplace at that point. Right after this is when you started seeing all of these lenders that came in and said, we'll loan you 125% of the value of your house and all of these things. And all of a sudden our houses became our piggy banks. Then we had the crash. And I believe, just me, part of the reason for the crash of '08 was because we started using houses as our piggy banks. Because the equity was no longer sacred. And because of that, it's what we find ourselves in today. Everything in the United States is bought on payments. And I think it's becoming a worldwide phenomenon, which is kind of scary. Okay, that's law number 21. Any other questions?
Yes, we have someone asking, could you explain bracketing again?
Okay, so if you'll run the numbers for, let me get to the bracketing slide here. If you'll run the numbers for your marketplace, all right, and just run sold properties for any time frame that you want to, what you will find is properties don't break out of their price brackets when they sell. Okay, so as an example, we have the average sales price for a house like what I'm getting ready to list is $210,000. All right, there's two different pricing points for that house. Either go up to 225 because you're in the 200 to 225 bracket, or price it at 199. That's going to deal with the condition of the property, okay? Because what we found with buyers, because they're so payment driven, there really is no difference to the buyer between 210, 215, 220, or 225. At that point, they will buy the best house they can find with physical features because they're already comfortable with the payment. Now, if we can't get any traction at that point, we've got to get into a new bracket. So that's under 200. So I'm always amazed when people, they'll have a house at 220 and they'll drop it to 217.5. Nobody cares. That does not create agent excitement. I mean, do you get excited when you see somebody drop their price $2,500? No. What's going to happen? It's going to have to get to the next bracket of people. All right. When we do the listing presentation class, which we're going to start the first session in 2 weeks, and when we get into pricing, I will dig deeply into this and show you statistically how this works. All right. But for now, run your own numbers. Just run sold properties. for, the last quarter of last year and start looking at when it's priced in, depending on what market you're in. But if it's priced in the 200 to 225, it's going to sell between 200 and 225. Properties that are priced above 225 always sell above 225 up to 250. And start running your own data and watch what happens. And this makes a lot of sense to sellers. Okay. All right. Hopefully that was a little bit better explanation. Do we have another question, Maddie?
We do. We have a two-part question, and then it looks like Chrissy Pierce has her hand raised. So for the two-part question, part one, Wayne Tyler Clark here with Remax Energy. As we enter a buyer's market and sellers are more willing to pay concessions, as a listing agent, how do we protect our sellers' leverage if they're offering concessions?
Well, if your sellers already having to offer concessions, Tyler, you've lost leverage. So there's this balance, right, between concessions are the concessions are going right now is buy downs, right? And it's sexier to do a 3-2-1 buy down than it is to say I'll pay X amount of your closing costs. Okay, but if you're starting to have to do seller concessions, you've lost your leverage. So what we have to weigh is what's better for my seller, X amount of dollars of concessions on a loan buy down, or am I better off just dropping the price into the next bracket? I guess that would be the easiest way for me to answer that. What's the second part of this question?
The second part says, also, I've been working on my listing presentation and I feel a lot more confident. The one problem I'm noticing is that I'm having good conversations and getting listings. However, my presentation is very long. I find myself at the seller's home for 1 to 2 hours on step 2 of the listing presentation. Any advice on how I can shorten my presentation and still cover all the correct material?
Tyler, I got a question back for you. Are you getting the listings and are you getting them at the price you need to? We'll have to wait for Tyler to answer that.
Tyler,
are you getting most of them at the price you need to?
Feel free to answer. And oh, here we go. He says yes for the most part.
Yeah. So sorry, but yeah, a listing presentation done properly, it's an hour and a half. It is, because you're covering the right stuff. And by the way, I'll give a shout out to Tyler. Tyler is 21 years old, and his first full year in real estate. I think, Tyler, I think you did 26 transactions, if that's correct, in your first full year of real estate. So he's getting after it. It's awesome. But no, look, my listing presentations, honestly, were always at least an hour. And more likely an hour and a half. Some of them would be 2 or 3 hours, depending on how many questions the sellers had, and we would just keep going through it so they understood. To me, there's such an education process that has been lacking in our industry on explaining exactly what people should be able to expect from the transaction. So, yeah, I would not try to speed it up anymore, Tyler. I think it's the most dollar productive thing you can do. And then we had a question from somebody else, right, Maddie?
Yes, Tyler did say on here now, I've seen realtor remarks saying, ask about our 2-1 buy down with our preferred lender. And he said that 25 transactions last year. So
25. Okay.
There we go.
Only 25 in your first full year in real estate at 21 years old. Yeah. You're slacking, Tyler. You're slacking. All right. What's the next question?
Chrissy, it looks like if you'd like to unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask your question.
Hi, Wayne. This is a
Hello.
question.
I can't see you. Go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is a question bouncing back to last week. This is crazy because I'm not really a Facebook person, but I'm very interested in the closed Facebook session of last week for clients only. Do you have any materials that would help somebody getting started in other words, how do you start it if you've never done it before? Any suggestions? Do you have any material on that?
I'll be honest with you, I don't have anything in writing, but we can certainly put something together for you. And I know once I do this, everybody's going to probably want this. This is a huge play. And so are you talking about the how to set, like physically how to set up a group on Facebook.
You start, yeah, if you're, and again, I'm not even a Facebook person, but I think that would be a great, it sounded great. I liked the way it worked, but any hints as to, okay, from start ground zero, what's the best way to go about building it?
I will promise you that will be a lead in to our next session, and I will have something for you within 2 weeks.
Amazing.
Is that
Thank
fair
you
enough?
very much. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. And
Everybody's
Ryan
doing-
Lerma, if you're on here, I'm going to be calling you because you got a great close Facebook group. So, or maybe Ashley Woodward. I don't know which yet. So anyway, but we will get the information to you because it's a huge play. I love
Wonderful.
the play. I think it's awesome. Anybody else?
We have another question in here. It's in reference to Tyler Clark. They said 26 transaction. What method did he use? Referral, leads, or Sphere?
Well, I know Tyler's numbers well. Tyler was 14 transactions from Sphere. 12 transactions were just absolutely prospected. He stumbled into door knocking and he crushed it. And it's a great success story for his first year in real estate. Any other questions?
Looks like those are it for now.
Okay, perfect. We will see you guys in 2 weeks for session 1. Oops. Oh, I just totally messed up my slides. So my apologies. Here we go. Back to this. The ultimate listing presentation, part 1. We're going to work real hard, guys, in the first part of this year, listing presentations, buyer presentations. And we're going to put the Facebook closed group together. I've got to run. Jeff Wright's over my shoulder holding his phone up. So I got to go do another presentation. Guys, have a great week. We love you. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.